It was the darkest of times. Muhammad bin Tughlaq had expanded his empire in every direction, bringing death and destruction in his wake. It was a dark time for all. But little did he know that it wouldn't last too long. For when he attacked Kampili, he would capture its two princes and convert them to Islam, taking them hostage. For several years, they were nothing more than captives. But when the inevitable chaos in the Delhi Sultanate arrived next time, they used it to run away. And they headed south to the Tungabhadra river, where they found their capital after converting back to Hinduism. It was a city that became central to the resistance against the attacks of the Delhi Sultanate, a symbol of Hindu revival, a city central to the second golden age of India. It was called Vijayanagara, and the two princes that returned were called Harihara and Bukka Raya. And they together founded the Vijayanagar Empire. Oh, and also this is where Tenali Rama existed, the figure that we all grew up with, hearing the stories of. So the decentralized mess that was barely held together by Scotch tape. Excuse me? American historian Burton Stein argued that the empire barely had any symbolic power over the rest of the empire outside of its core region. American historians have no business getting into Indian history. Vijayanagar Empire was a strong militaristic empire that remained united to fight against the northern invasions from the Deccan sultanates. When Babur came to India and surveyed every king in the subcontinent, he considered the Vijayanagar Empire king, Krishnadevaraya, to be the most formidable. But still, it doesn't refute my point, does it? Alright, you know what? Let's debate on why you think the Vijayanagar Empire wasn't the golden age of India. Oh, you're on. Imagine this. A group of people come in and they bring great death and destruction to your land. It has happened before. You have dealt with people like this. You have figured out a way to assimilate them and calm down the violence that they bring with them. You're confident you can deal with them. Except these people refuse to assimilate. These people refuse to become a part of you. Instead, they want to destroy your way of life, erase your culture. And when you refuse to do so, they tax you or even torture you to make sure that you become one of them. They bring a horrible time and the dark ages to you. In the middle of all of that, one kingdom dares fight back. One kingdom dares bring back the old ways. And it is fierce in protecting it. And that results in some of the most beautiful architecture you have ever seen in your land. What else is that other than the golden age? Okay, the way you're categorizing the rest of the age as dark ages is something that the British did to justify their rule over India. They categorized the rest of Indian medieval age as dark ages, as stagnant and backwards, to justify them coming and saving Indians. It was revisionist historians, in particular certain nationalists, who made an exception to this rule of dark ages by saying, oh, the Vijayanagar Empire was actually a bright spot in the middle of the dark ages. When in reality, medieval India had dozens of amazing kingdoms that produced economic progress and equally beautiful structures. Yes, kingdoms like Chola Empire, Gujara Pratiharas, Rashtrakutas, and the Palas. Kingdoms that had not been around for centuries by this point. On top of that, these kingdoms were such that they imposed their language and their religion onto the people they conquered. The Chola Empire destroyed many Buddhist monasteries and Vishnu temples into Shiva temples, and they imposed Tamil onto people who did not speak it. Whereas Vijayanagar Empire allowed for people of different religion and languages to coexist peacefully. And that was the reason why there was so much fragmentation in the empire. It wasn't centralized at all. Each king of each region could make their own policy. And what that did was fragment the experience of every person living there. It wasn't easy to gather the entire army under the emperor to fight off any invasion. Outside of a few exceptions, most of the time the job of defending the empire fell to the northern districts. Once they fell, it became relatively easy to subjugate the empire in the 16th century. The empire's prosperity depended heavily on the military success of these border states. This created the inherent instability that caused the dramatic collapse of the empire after the Battle of Telikota in 1565. Also, this meant that the prosperity you talk of was not uniform across the empire, as it was hard to share resources in a decentralized empire like this. The way you can imagine how Vijayanagara Empire organized itself was that it was hundreds of smaller kingdoms that paid homage to the emperor culturally and through religious symbolism. Tell me one thing, where would you rather live? A decentralized state where you were allowed to practice your culture any which way you saw fit, or a centralized state where the government imposed their culture onto you? And it was this decentralization that caused there to be a rivalry between the regions of Vijayanagara Empire, which caused there to be a revolution in art and architecture. The Persian traveler named Abdul Razak said, "The city of Vijayanagar is such that the people of the eye has never seen a place like it, and the ear of intelligence has never been informed that there exists anything to equal it in the world." The Portuguese traveler Domingo Paes said, "This is the best provided city in the world," and he even compared it to ancient Rome. Vijayanagara Empire was the center point between trades of the entire world, and it was this empire that the Europeans first encountered and called the Golden Bird. What makes you think that other Indian capitals like Delhi were not equally spectacular? What about Rajputi forts like Chittor? Delhi was one of the largest cities that many of the foreigners had ever been to. They were usually shocked by the variety of people they saw in there. It was cosmopolitan and tolerant. There were people who spoke dozens of languages there and followed different religions, all mixing together perfectly in harmony in the beautiful bazaars of Delhi. As long as you paid your jizya tax, you were allowed to express yourself as a Hindu. And most Hindus living in Delhi were wealthy and they were expressive. It was one of the biggest cities in the entire world, full of wonders that would awe any traveler. Was it the same after Timur's attack, or are you talking about its significance before, or maybe years after while it was under the Mughals? Because for a time in the middle, it was a ghost town. The Lodi dynasty had started to rebuild it. It wasn't enough to make it recover. Admitted, for a century or more, there was no city like Vijayanagar. Vijayanagar architecture represents the pinnacle of South Indian temple design. It mixes classical Dravidian styles with new innovative styles that were inspired by other regions of the subcontinent. The Vitala temple complex at Hampi exemplifies this with its iconic stone chariot, music pillars, and intricate sculptures. Archaeological evidence shows intricate planning in Hampi with over 1600 structures across 41.5 square kilometers. The capital featured complex engineering marvels that wowed contemporary observers. Krishnadevaraya court fostered the golden age of Telugu literature through the Ashtadigajas, or 8 great poets. This period saw prolific production in Telugu, Kannada, Sanskrit, and Tamil poems. They were the center of culture of the entire subcontinent and to a small degree of the entire world. The world? Did you forget about Beijing or Venice? Now you're just throwing names of cities at me. Indian historians and honestly Indian historiographers over-exaggerate the importance of certain kingdoms or empires or certain events in Indian history. The historiographers are people who write down the history as it is happening at that time. There are inscriptions of kings who have declared that they have conquered the entire world and they have only conquered the Ganga Valley. These foreign travelers that described Vijayanagar, that was the first capital that they encountered in the subcontinent. Of course, they would be impressed. Not to say that the city of Vijayanagar was not impressive. I mean, its ruins in Hampi are some of the most beautiful things I've ever laid eyes on. But that doesn't mean there aren't better cities out there in the subcontinent. More importantly, just because there was wealth and amazing architecture, that doesn't mean that this wealth was spread evenly across the society. Only the elite had access to the beauty and the wealth of this land. Vijayanagar maintained rigid social hierarchy with significant disparities between the elite prosperities and the common folk experience. The travelers usually only experienced the wealth of the courts instead of the broad-based wealth of the people. as opposed to Delhi Sultanate, where the poor were taxed so much that they had to leave their land and work behind to avoid taxation. Touche. But the point still stands. Its architectural beauty and prosperity of the elite doesn't highlight what it was like living there as a common person. Sure, we can barely be certain of what it was like to live in any medieval society because all the sources we have of it are limited and biased. But still, at the end of the day, Vijayanagar Empire was an exceptional empire with a strong militaristic core, one of the best navies ever in the Indian history, had trade relationships across the world, and it was the empire that the Europeans visited first when Vasco da Gama came here. So we have Western perspective on this empire quite a bit. But was it more exceptional than the other empires and kingdoms in India? Well, that's up to you to decide. And I'll see you next time.